Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles, where today you are going to have the privilege of witnessing a carry of epic proportions. Honestly, this could have been an episode of A Game of Throws, but it's not that long since we last had one, so just a regular video it is. This, and I know we've seen them before somewhere, but I can't remember where, is Hot Sauce for Breakfast in the Chilean Tier 6 light cruiser, which is technically just the Italian Abruzzi class of cruisers, the Almirante Cochrane. Now, if you're thinking Cochrane doesn't sound like a particularly Chilean name, you'd be absolutely correct. It's a Scottish name, so what are the Chileans doing naming their ships after Scotsmen? Well, the Thomas Cochrane that this ship was named after was the 10th Earl of Dundonald, an admiral in the Royal Navy, a politician and a mercenary, and he served as the Chilean Vice Admiral during their War of Independence. Hence why they named ships after him. There's also what remains of a naval base in Rosyth, near Edinburgh, that bears his name. So what do you need to know about the ship, the Cochrane? Well, like I said, it's basically an almost exact copy of the Italian Abruzzi class of light cruiser. It's armed with 8 extremely accurate and rapid reloading 152mm guns, although the shells themselves don't do a huge amount of damage. It only gets armour-piercing ammunition, although they do get improved penetration angles to compensate for the lack of high explosive. It's fast, it's agile, it's got good stealth. It has torpedoes that hit reasonably hard, although they only have an 8km range, but the reload isn't too bad and the torpedo firing angles are fairly good, but it does only get to launch 3 of them from each side. On the downside, it does have a very vulnerable exposed citadel. The penetration values for the armor-piercing ammunition aren't fantastic, and it does get a wide selection of consumables, including a heel, hydroacoustic search, and a fighter aircraft. But the cooldowns on those consumables are kind of on the long side. This, however, is compensated for by the funny button. Yes, it's a Tier 6 cruiser that gets a funny button. This is the operational readiness funny button. How this works is you score hits with the main battery guns and it charges it up, and then when it's ready to go, you activate it and it reduces the cooldown on all of your consumables by 75%. Admittedly, this isn't an obviously useful thing, unlike, for example, a main battery or torpedo reload booster, but situationally, it can be very powerful. Meanwhile, Hot Sauce for Breakfast is in a bit of a tricky situation. That's a lot of submarines and destroyers in his immediate vicinity, and there's a battleship coming around the corner of that island too. They've forced the submarine to dive. He's got depth charges out on what looks like another one, although no hits, and here comes an enemy destroyer. And remember, this thing doesn't get high explosive ammunition. And yep, another enemy destroyer coming around the other side. But well, first things first, deal with the problem, or problems, because there's 2 of them, the submarine and the destroyer in front of you. Depth charges out. Strange that why did that guy not launch torpedoes? Oh god, there's 3 of them. Oh, there are the torpedoes. Okay, the Hatsuharu successfully committed suicide. Now he just has to worry about the pair of U-69s in front of him, although the one to his immediate right, his depth charges did cripple some of its torpedo tubes. Friendly Hatsuharu took out one of the U-69s. The remaining submarine no longer has any firing angles on him, and Hot Sauce for Breakfast is in no rush to do anything silly like go out there and try to ram it. He can drop depth charges on it from here and shoot at it from here, and let's not forget there is a Fuso approaching from the other side of that island, and you don't want to be sailing out in front of that thing if you can possibly avoid it. I think it's fair to say that the enemy team really want this cap circle. It looks like they've driven the surviving U-69 off. Here comes the Fuso. Now this could end very badly. He does have torpedoes, and they're not bad, but he can only launch 3 of them per side. And while the Fuso may only have 14-inch guns, it does have 12 of them, and at this kind of range they will smash through his forward bulkheads and rip his citadel apart without even thinking about it. But the Fuso, for reasons known only to himself, has not only decided to charge straight into a crossfire between a T-22 and an Almirante Cochrane. I mean, okay, he got the T-22, but that's not exactly a fair trade. Then again, Hot Sauce for Breakfast's team have lost 5 ships trying to hold on to this cap circle, and the Fuso was only the enemy team's 3rd casualty. For once in a World of Warships replay, the scores at the top of the screen are actually accurate, and the enemy team have they have a slightly more than 115 point lead now that Hot Sauce's team have just suffered a further 2 casualties. The enemy team have a 4 kill and 150 point advantage. Unfortunately, the Emerald captain over there never appeared to get the memo about how ridiculously vulnerable his citadel is. It doesn't take many broadside shots to kill an Emerald. However, while it doesn't have any armour whatsoever, it does have a lot of torpedoes. And while the Cochrane doesn't have Hydro, you don't need it to know that if an Emerald's giving you a broadside like that, he's trying to get his torpedoes away. So, nose in towards the Emerald's location, while, speaking of torpedoes, still attempting to deal with that U-69, but hang on, where are the Emerald's torpedoes? The Emerald, he was in torpedo range. He turned to give broadside to clear his torpedo firing angles and didn't launch any torpedoes. Honestly, the Emerald's a terrible ship. The only thing it's good for is launching torpedoes. And he tried to take on a Cochrane in a gunfight. Okay. Well, the U-69's still out there somewhere. And while I'm sure Hot Sauce for Breakfast would have loved to have taken that cap circle, he had to get some distance between himself and the U-69 who had him pinged and was launching torpedoes. But he's still in there somewhere. Not on the surface though, otherwise he would be flipping the cap. The majority of the 7 surviving ships on the enemy team, compared to the 3 surviving ships on Hot Sauce for Breakfast team, are all up there flipping cap circle alpha. Which means that he does have a bit of breathing space. Aside from himself, his team have that Bayern and the Vasterus over there, which is bad news on a number of different levels. One, because they're all spread out across the map, so they can't really support each other when a threat pops up, like the USS Hill over there, who's going after the Bayern. Also, because of what's remaining on the enemy team, they've got 2 cruisers and the rest are all destroyers and submarines. Like, there's the U-69 again, here he comes. Okay. You see, the thing is, the majority of the surviving ships on the enemy team are all sneaky little buggers, and when they get spotted, although there's one less to worry about now, there goes the U-69, they're probably not going to stay spotted for long. So you're likely to only have a couple of seconds to shoot at them. And that's kind of why these 3 guys all need to stack together. The mutual support and the ability to maximise their firepower against sneaky little buggers like the surviving submarine on the enemy team and those 3 destroyers. Also, having the Bayern's firepower against those 2 enemy cruisers would be very, very nice. Here comes the USS Hill. And there's some very, very suspicious looking high explosive. Hang on a minute. Those are deep water torpedoes. That's the other cruiser. That's the Ramat. Alright, take out the Hill. Nice. Deep water torpedoes. That's the Pan-Asian cruiser on the enemy team. With the Hill dead, he can no longer see you, so if he wants to be able to fight you, he's going to have to come out of that smoke screen. Or he can stay in the smoke screen and get torpedoed, his choice. Hot Sauce has a speculative poke with his 6-inch guns and is rewarded with an extremely lucky citadel, which prompts the Ramat into returning fire and exposing his position. I mean, it was that or get citadel by the follow-up salvo, so, you know, that's fine. It wasn't exactly a mistake. Now, we know he's already launched torpedoes from the port side, and he is turning. Okay, so he's trying to get torpedoes away from the starboard side. Unfortunately, this does mean exposing rather too much broadside than is strictly comfortable. Yep, sure enough, there are the torpedoes. Hot Sauce, of course, had Hydro running, because you don't take chances when there are potentially deep water torpedoes being launched against you and you're in a cruiser. Those things hurt, and they're very, very sneaky, so just about the only warning that you're going to have that they're on the way is if you have Hydro running, or you can predict what the enemy captain's going to do, both of which were probably true in this case. And suddenly, it's a 3-on-3, and they're only 30 points behind. He still hasn't managed to take this cap circle, although not through lack of trying. Now he is spotted, which could mean a submarine on the surface, or it could mean an enemy destroyer. I mean, obviously, destroyers and submarines are the only things the enemy team have left. So the other 2 ships on the team, the Vasterus and the Bayern, have grouped up. the Bayern did just take a torpedo hit. Now, head north and join up with the other two, or try to take this cap. Well, the fact that you've just been spotted has kind of taken the decision out of his hands. Because somebody's flipping the cap here at Delta, they have you targeted, and they're clearly in the mood for a fight. It's an enemy submarine. Well, we know where the... Oh, it's not just an enemy submarine. Once again, he's outnumbered, although not necessarily outfought. Now, he has been sonar pinged, but he knows he's got, well, maybe 20 seconds before the U-69 can reload its torpedo tubes. And while that's happening, he's shooting at the... it's one of those new French destroyers, the Ladois. Okay, the U-69 has dived, so that's taken a little bit of pressure off him, but not much, because, yeah, he's getting shot at by the other surviving enemy destroyer from the other side of the map. He is now basically caught in a crossfire, and he's fighting off the entire enemy team, who all are trying to get him sunk. Great news for the friendly Masterus and the Bayern. Not such good news for Hot Sauce for Breakfast. He's now basically too close to use his depth charges. Sadly, the Ladois isn't dead yet. I guess if you need a job doing properly, you've just got to do it yourself. You should now have enough distance to be able to queue some depth charges when they come off cooldown. And at least he's not getting shot at by the other destroyer. It's too close to the island. Doesn't have a line of fire. The Ladois is proving to be remarkably non-compliant when it comes to dying. And he's gone undetected. He's now outside of spotting range. Although he can obviously still see Hot Sauce for Breakfast. Is he going to be tempted to shoot? It would be nice if he was. Hot Sauce could finish him off. At least he now has this cap circle to himself. I mean, the U-69's still here. Oh, well, that's a very suspicious looking smoke screen. Here comes the Leone. And there's the U-69. And there are more torpedoes coming. Well, he is at least able to get the depth charges out. He's gotten his own torpedoes away against that extremely suspicious looking Italian smoke screen over there. He eats more torpedoes. There's a flood. The damage control is on cooldown. There's nothing he can do about that. He's already used his combat instructions to clear and use his cooldowns. Surprisingly, the Leone in that smokescreen over there is actually smart enough to switch to armour piercing when dealing with a broadside light cruiser. However, he is not smart enough to remember that smokescreens are, in fact, torpedo magnets. U-69 pops up. Hot Sauce takes him out. Still no sign of the Ladois. The U-69, however, before he went down, did manage to get a single torpedo away. And given the terrible state that the ship was in, well, as Admiral Akbar once said, our cruisers cannot repel firepower of that magnitude. Hot Sauce has gone down, but one hell of a fight. Meanwhile, the Vasterus's torpedoes have just found and sunk the Leone, which means that the Ladois, who did well to survive, but now finds himself in the unlucky situation of being the last one left alive on his team. 1 kill, 1 cap circle, 30 points behind, which is kind of remarkable when you consider that about 5 minutes ago he was 4 kills and 300 points and 1 cap circle ahead. And of course the Bayern, smart enough to know that when you're facing destroyers and submarines, you switch to the high explosive. And so, I mean, that would have been a worthy contender for a game of throws, but I feel that would have been a disservice to Hot Sauce for Breakfast here, who... I mean, he had 2 good surviving teammates at the end there in the shape of the Vasterus and the Bayern, but that was one hell of a carry. From about 3 minutes in, it basically never stopped. All around the cap circle down here in Delta, always outnumbered, but never outfought. Hot Sauce for Breakfast in the Almirante Cochrane. Hope you all enjoyed it, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.